The mall erupted into chaos the moment the elderly woman collapsed. Shoppers scattered, security froze, and only one person ran toward danger, a maid. Serena dropped to her knees, fighting for the woman's life, just as a millionaire's son sprinted toward them, certain the maid was hurting his grandmother. He had no idea the truth was about to shock him and change everything. Before this moment, before the crowd screamed and the millionaire's world cracked open, Serena Scott lived a life most people overlooked. A life of quiet mornings before sunrise, long shifts in polished houses that never felt like home, and a single dream she carried for her daughter, Michelle. Let's go back to where it all began. But before we begin, if you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as lovely and crazy as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. Serena's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., the shrill little buzz cracking through the quiet of their small beige apartment. She always silenced it on the first ring, careful not to wake Michelle. Her daughter slept curled on her side, her textbooks spread across the tiny table from the night before, geometry problems half-solved, vocabulary words scribbled in bubble letters, a future she refused to let poverty crush. Serena tied her hair back in the mirror. No makeup, no jewelry, just chapstick and a tired smile she practiced every morning. She whispered to herself, another day, just keep going. The apartment kitchen was too small for two people to stand in comfortably. Serena moved through it quietly, heating water for oatmeal, folding Michelle's uniform, packing her daughter's lunch. She always left a little note inside the container. You can do anything. I believe in you, Mom. Sometimes Michelle kept them in her backpack for weeks. At 5:15 a.m., Serena pulled on her black uniform, freshly washed, though fraying at the seams, and buttoned the white apron over it. It didn't matter that people often looked through her rather than at her. It didn't matter that some homeowners spoke to her like she wasn't fully human. She needed the job. She needed the pay. She needed every cent for Michelle's school fees, for rent, for food that stretched, for the little moments that reminded them both the world hadn't beaten them yet. Before leaving, Serena kissed Michelle's forehead. I'll see you after school, Shell, she whispered. Michelle murmured in her sleep. Love you, Mama. Serena slipped out the door, locking it quietly behind her. By 6 a.m., Serena arrived at the first house on her schedule, a massive stone place owned by a couple who argued more with their interior designer than with each other. Everything was white. The walls, the sofas, the vases, even the cold marble floors. Serena's shoes squeaked softly as she cleaned. Don't touch the sculptures, the lady of the house always said. Make sure the counters shine, the man added, never looking up from his phone. Serena worked silently, efficiently. She wasn't slow enough to be noticed or fast enough to be scolded. She had learned the perfect rhythm years ago. By noon, she moved to a different home. By late afternoon, another. 3 houses. 8 hours. No breaks except for the moments she took in people's empty dining rooms, sipping water she didn't dare ask for. Still, she kept going. She always kept going. On the bus home one evening, Serena stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into trails. A young couple walked hand in hand across a crosswalk. A little boy tugged his mother toward an ice cream cart. Life moved for others in ways it never seemed to move for her. But the bus window reflected another memory, one she never outran. Years before she became a maid, Serena had worked in a hospital's caregiving unit. Her job was simple, but it mattered. She helped elderly patients bathe, change clothes, sit up, eat. She held their hands when they cried. She learned the rhythms of fragile breaths and the meaning behind every small change in color, heartbeat, or sound. You should be a nurse, one doctor once told her. She smiled but shook her head. School cost money she did not have. Money that kept being swallowed by hospital bills, her mother's hospital bills. Serena took every shift she could manage, some she couldn't. But no number of hours could stop the thing slowly killing her mother's heart. And when her mother collapsed one night while Serena was at her bedside, Serena knew instantly what was happening. The pale lips, the trembling fingers, the fading pulse, the breath that came too late and too shallow. A nurse raced in. A doctor followed. Machines screamed. But within minutes, her mother was gone. Serena's heart had cracked in ways she still didn't fully understand. Since then, every breathless body reminded her of the woman she lost. Every gasp made her chest tighten. Every collapsed figure returned her to that room. And that was why, When Mama T was falling, Serena didn't freeze. She couldn't. She wouldn't. Serena recognized cardiac distress the way some people recognized faces. When Serena got home each night, the heaviness lifted the moment she saw Michelle. Her daughter was her purpose, her reason, her anchor. Michelle always greeted her with excitement, even if Serena looked exhausted. "You're home," Michelle cried, waving her homework in the air. "Guess what? I aced my quiz." Serena smiled with tired eyes. "I'm so proud of you, baby." Michelle hugged her tightly. She always smelled faintly of school hallways and bubblegum lip balm. "How was work?" Michelle asked. Serena hesitated, because the truth was, work was backbreaking, lonely, and sometimes humiliating. But she always said, "It was fine, sweetheart." Michelle would frown, unconvinced. "You're gonna rest one day?" "I know it." Serena touched her cheek. One day. Serena had saved someone once before. Years ago, in the hospital. An elderly man had collapsed during visiting hours. Serena noticed before anyone else. She dropped her tray, rushed to him, and performed compressions exactly as she'd been taught. The man lived. But instead of praise, she received a warning. The nurse manager pulled her aside, stern-faced. "You acted without authorization," the woman said. "You can't perform medical procedures unless instructed." Serena blinked. "But he would have died." "That's not the point," the manager snapped. "You broke protocol." 2 weeks later, Serena's contract was not renewed. Since then, Serena learned one thing. Helping was often punished. Saving someone didn't always mean saving yourself. So she kept quiet, stayed in the shadows, did her job, and went home. She avoided attention like fire. And she never, ever sought praise. Standing in that mall with shopping bags cutting into her fingers, Serena had spotted the signs from a distance. The way Mama T leaned on the railing, the faint bluish tint around her lips, the trembling hands, the glassy stare of someone trying to stay conscious. Nothing about it looked random or mild. Serena's heart had jolted in her chest. Heart failure, acute distress, seconds from collapse. It was the same look her mother had right before the world went silent. And the moment Mama T fell backwards, Serena relived every second of that old hospital room. This time, she refused to lose someone again. Her hands had moved instinctively. Check the pulse. Clear the airway. Begin compressions. With every push on Mama T's chest, Serena whispered the same thing she whispered the night her mother slipped away. "Stay with me. Stay with me. Please don't go." Each compression was a memory, a prayer, a promise. And this time, her hands were not too late. Even after saving Mama T, even after the woman gasped back to life, even after the paramedics said she was a hero, Serena felt no triumph. Only fear. Fear that someone would accuse her. Fear that someone would say she touched what wasn't hers. Fear that she'd be blamed, fired, humiliated. Just like before, she had already been punished for doing good. And when John Williams glared at her on that mall floor, demanding, "What did you do to her?" that fear returned like a punch to her stomach. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Because Michelle once asked her, "Mama, if someone is dying, would you help?" Serena had answered softly, "Yes, baby. Always." And she meant it. Praise was dangerous. Recognition was dangerous. But saving a life? That was a responsibility she could never turn away from. As the ambulance doors closed around Mama T, Serena stood shaking on the mall floor. The crowd's noise faded. Michelle's arms wrapped around her waist, grounding her back into reality. "You did it, Mama," Michelle whispered, voice trembling. "You saved her." Serena swallowed hard. Her hands trembled. "No, baby," she whispered. "I just helped. That's all." But deep inside, her heart was pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. Something about Mama T's eyes, the way they widened in recognition, the faint tremor in her voice when she whispered, "Her. Bring her." Serena felt as if the past she buried had just reached out and grabbed her. And when John Williams looked at her, confused, shaken, desperate, there was something in his expression she couldn't name. Fear, wonder, suspicion, gratitude, all of them at once. Serena didn't know. All she knew was that her life, her quiet, unseen, unnoticed life, was about to collide with a family she never expected to meet. A family who would soon learn the truth about her. And a grandmother who remembered something Serena had long tried to forget. The ride to the hospital felt longer than any trip John Williams had ever taken. even though the ambulance siren carved through traffic like a blade. He sat stiffly beside the paramedic, his hands clasped so tightly they shook. Mama T lay unconscious on the stretcher, her chest rising shallowly under the oxygen mask. Every time the monitor beeped, John flinched. He felt 12 years old again, helpless, terrified, clinging to the one woman who had never failed him. And now that woman was fighting for her life. He kept replaying the mall scene in his head, the way her body had collapsed, the way the crowd screamed, the way he saw a maid kneeling over her. The shock, the fear, the accusation. The moment Mama T gasped back to life under Serena's hands. His chest tightened, his throat burned. He still didn't understand what happened. He only understood one thing. He almost lost the only person in this world who truly loved him without conditions. The world knew John Williams as a man of steel edges and unbreakable logic. A self-made millionaire. A real estate powerhouse. A negotiator who never blinked. People respected him. Some feared him. Most wanted something from him. But very few knew him. John's empire began in his early 20s. When other college graduates scrambled for first jobs, John dove headfirst into the world of high-end property flipping. He studied market patterns, wealthy neighborhoods, buyer psychology. He worked 80-hour weeks, missing meals and birthdays, losing friends along the way. He built apartments, luxury malls, business hubs, structures so sleek and expensive that people whispered his name whenever they entered one. They praised his sharp mind. They admired his ambition. They envied his success. But success had teeth. It ate into every part of his life, including the parts that made him human. He had no wife, no partner, no time. Work was everything. Rest was conditional. Love was optional, complicated, inconvenient. There were nights he returned home and didn't even turn on the lights. The silence felt easier than pretending to be someone who could connect. And yet, there was one person he never closed his heart to. One person he never had to impress. One person who loved him as he was. Mama T. Her real name was Theodora Williams, but no one had called her that in decades. To the community, she was Mama T, the woman with the wide smile, warm laugh, and a strength that defied her age. To John, she was everything. When his parents' marriage fell apart, when his father drowned himself in work, when his mother chased her own freedom across the country, Mama T was the one who stayed. She fed him before school, tucked him in at night, and taught him to pray when life felt unbearable. She saved every birthday card he drew for her. She scolded him when he acted too grown for his own good. She visited him at his first apartment when he couldn't afford furniture. She brought food on holidays when he forgot the date. And when he finally saw success, when his first building opened, she hugged him with tears in her eyes and whispered, "You made it, baby. I always knew you would." John wasn't good at crying. He wasn't good at soft emotions. But that day he had. In her arms, he always felt like the scared little kid she once held together. Mama T wasn't just family. She was home. The Williams family held influence. Old money mixed with new power. Their name opened doors. Their wealth sealed deals. Their social circle glittered with politicians, CEOs, and people who pretended they weren't lonely. John learned early that people didn't want the real him. They wanted the version that benefited them. So he built walls. Tall ones. Expensive, glass-like, polished ones that hid everything vulnerable underneath. He stopped trusting. He stopped feeling. He became the man the world needed him to be. Controlled, calculating, respected. But Mama T never accepted that mask. "You ain't cold," she'd tell him. "You're scared." He'd scoff, deny it. But she always saw the truth. And she always loved him anyway. Now, in the harsh white lights of the emergency wing, John paced the corridor like he was losing his mind. Nurses rushed past. Machines beeped behind closed doors. A doctor whispered orders into a radio. But the only sound John heard was the echo of his own guilt. He should have been with Mama T. He should have noticed she wasn't well. He should have taken her to her last doctor appointment instead of sending a driver. He should have told her he loved her more often. He should have. Every unfinished sentence felt like a punishment. Finally, a doctor approached, middle-aged, tired eyes, coat slightly wrinkled. "Mr. Williams?" John stopped. "Is she stable? Is she breathing on her own?" "What?" The doctor lifted a hand. "She's alive. For now." Those words nearly broke him. "But she went into cardiac distress," the doctor continued. "It was severe. She lost oxygen for several seconds. John swallowed hard. Is she conscious? Not yet. John gripped the back of a chair. His knuckles turned white. What caused it? He whispered. The doctor sighed. Her heart has been weakening for a long time. Stress, age. But the main issue is she didn't get help quickly enough. John's breath hitched. He felt a sharp stab in his chest. The doctor hesitated, then added, if that maid hadn't acted when she did, she'd be gone. John's entire body tensed. His jaw tightened. His eyes burned, but he blinked the emotion away. The maid saved her? He asked. Yes, the doctor said. And I mean saved. She recognized the symptoms immediately. She started CPR perfectly. She kept her breathing until the ambulance arrived. Without her, he paused, we would be having a very different conversation. John leaned back against the wall, unable to speak. For so many years, he had believed money could solve anything. That professionals, specialists, and world-class equipment were the safest hands. But in the most desperate moment of Mama T's life, the one who saved her wasn't a doctor, wasn't a trained medic, wasn't anyone the family would have noticed. It was a maid, a stranger, a woman he had accused, a woman he had misunderstood, a woman he had doubted. John rubbed his face with trembling hands. Where is she? He asked quietly. The doctor frowned. Who? The maid, John said. Serena. I'm not sure, sir. Last I saw, mall security was questioning her after the incident. John closed his eyes. Security. Questioning. For helping his grandmother. For saving her life. His stomach twisted painfully. He had shouted at her. Accused her. Blamed her for touching Mama T. When all she had done was keep his grandmother alive. John slipped into the hospital waiting room and sank into a chair. The leather squeaked under his weight. For the first time in years, he felt small. Not the composed businessman. Not the decisive leader. Not the man people feared and respected. Just a grandson who had almost lost the only person he couldn't replace. He stared at the sterile floor, his thoughts spiraling. Why didn't I see her symptoms? Why wasn't I there? Why did a stranger care more than I did? The questions clawed at him like guilt with sharp teeth. John knew the truth he never admitted. He was emotionally distant. He loved people deeply, but distantly. He loved Mama T more than anyone, but visited her less than he should have. He meant to call her every weekend, but work always swallowed him whole. He planned to take her to the beach she adored, but business trips came first. He saved time for clients. He saved space for investors. He saved energy for success. He saved nothing for the woman who saved him. And now she lay unconscious behind a glass door. A tear slipped down his cheek. He wiped it quickly, as if ashamed of his own humanity. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Serena pressing on Mama T's chest. Focused, desperate, fearless. He saw her drop her shopping bags. He saw her hands trembling but steady. He saw her mouth whispering silent words of encouragement. She didn't know Mama T. She had no reason to rush toward danger. And yet she did. Without hesitation. Without reward. Without needing permission. John tried to imagine what would have happened if Serena hadn't been there. The thought made him sick. For the first time in his life, John Williams felt powerless. Money couldn't undo this. Power couldn't reverse time. Influence couldn't stitch the past back together. And the only reason he still had Mama T was because a maid cared enough to notice what he didn't. That realization cracked something inside him, a truth he could no longer ignore. He wasn't angry at Serena. He was angry at himself. Angry for not seeing the signs. Angry for judging her. Angry for living a life that kept him too far away from the woman he owed everything to. And deep down, beneath the pride, the fear, the shock, John felt something else. Gratitude. Raw, overwhelming gratitude. A nurse finally approached him. You can go in now, she said softly. John followed her through the quiet hall. He entered the room where Mama T lay, fragile, peaceful, a small oxygen tube at her nose. Machines hummed softly around her. He sat at her bedside and took her hand. Grandma, his voice cracked. I'm here. Her fingers didn't move. Her eyelids stayed closed. But he kept holding on. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have been with you sooner. I should have noticed. I should have tried harder. Please wake up. I still need you. The words tasted unfamiliar. Because he didn't voice his heart often. Not like this. Not to anyone but her. He lowered his head onto her hand. It was then he made a silent promise. One he would not break. If Mama T survived this, he would change. He would slow down. He would show up. He would be the grandson she deserved. And he would find Serena. Not to accuse her this time, not to question her, but to thank her, to acknowledge the truth. She saved Mama T's life, and in doing so, she saved his. Hours passed in the quiet pulse of machines, the distant shuffle of nurses, and the low hum of hospital lights. John hadn't moved from Mama T's bedside except to stand, stretch, and sit again. Each motion weighted with exhaustion he refused to acknowledge. His suit jacket hung over the chair, his tie was loose, and his eyes carried the raw strain of a man who'd been holding his breath since the mall. He checked the time again. 2:13 a.m. He hadn't eaten. He hadn't slept. He hadn't spoken to anyone except nurses. But he didn't care. He would sit by Mama T until she opened her eyes, even if it took days. He rubbed her hand gently, whispering, "Please wake up. Just talk to me, Grandma." For a moment, nothing changed. Then, her fingers twitched. John's head jerked up. He leaned forward, heart pounding. "Grandma? Grandma, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, slow, heavy, but real. "Mama T." His voice broke. Her eyes opened, thin, unfocused at first. The sterile white of the hospital ceiling reflected in her pupils. Then her gaze shifted to him, trembling and warm. "Johnny," she whispered, barely audible. John's breath escaped in a shaky gasp. He pressed her hand to his forehead. Thank God you're okay." She tried to smile, but even that small motion looked painful. Her voice rasped like it scraped against broken glass. "What happened?" John swallowed. "You collapsed at the mall. Your heart." He stopped himself before the fear choked him. "You're safe now. You're here. They're taking care of you." Mama T blinked slowly. Then, with surprising determination, she whispered, "Where is she?" John blinked. "Who?" Mama T's fingers trembled as she tugged at his wrist with what little strength she had left. "Find Serena," a breath. "Bring her to me." John froze. Serena, the maid from the mall, the woman he accused, the woman who saved Mama T's life. "Grandma," he said slowly, you know her?" Mama T's eyes, clouded with medication and exhaustion, still managed to hold a strange, unmistakable clarity. "Find her," she insisted. "Please." Confusion, guilt, and a flicker of something deeper tore through John. He sat beside her again. "Grandma, I don't understand. Where do you know her from?" She helped you, yes, but..." Mama T's hand rose weakly, trembling in the air until John steadied it with both of his. "She didn't just help me." Mama T paused, breath shaky, voice fading. "She helped him." John stiffened. Him? Only one him mattered in Mama T's past. "Grandpa," John whispered. Mama T nodded, tears glistening at the corner of her eyes. A chill slid down John's spine. "My God," he whispered. "How? When?" Mama T closed her eyes as if reaching backward through years of memory. When she opened them again, her voice trembled with something tender and painful all at once. "I met her years ago," she began. "At the hospital, when your grandfather was dying." John's breath caught. Memories of that time flooded him. Those dark, quiet weeks when grief lived in every corner of the house. He had been a young man then, already drowning in ambition, always running from meeting to meeting, telling himself he'd visit Grandpa more tomorrow. But Mama T had never left his bedside. She continued, voice barely above a whisper. He was suffering, but he wasn't alone. Because a young woman stayed with him, long after her shift, long after the other nurses walked away. She held his hand. She sang to him. She talked to him when he could no longer respond. A tear slipped down Mama T's temple. She made sure he didn't die afraid. John felt his throat tighten painfully. He had never known this. Not once had Mama T mentioned it. Who was she?" he whispered. Mama T's eyes softened with reverence. Her name was Serena. Mama T took a slow, ragged breath, her frail chest rising with visible effort. "I don't remember everything. Those days were a blur. But I remember her." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. A young black woman with gentle eyes, the calm voice, hands steady as prayer. John listened, stunned. "She wasn't like the others," Mama T continued. "The other nurses rushed. They were tired, overworked, stressed. But her smile deepened. She cared, truly cared." John pictured Serena at the mall, calm under pressure, focused despite the chaos. The way she spoke softly to Mama T, the way she guided Michelle. It fit, too perfectly. She treated him like he still mattered, Mama T whispered. like he was still human. She wiped his forehead when he got warm. She whispered stories to him. She held his hand until I came. Another tear fell from her eyes. And when he took his last breath, she didn't run. She stayed beside me. She held me when I cried. Me, a stranger. John pressed a hand to his mouth, overwhelmed. She hugged me. Mama T said quietly, not like a nurse, like a daughter. Her voice cracked. I never forgot the way she said, "You're not alone." John shut his eyes tightly. Every memory of the mall, every shred of anger, every irrational accusation burned him with shame. Mama T continued. I never got her last name. She left her job a week later. I searched Johnny. I truly did. I asked the hospital, but they said she moved away. They didn't have her file anymore. She shook her head, but I prayed I'd see her again. My little angel with the soft voice. John felt something between a sob and a gasp rise in his throat. And tonight, Mama T whispered faintly. When I opened my eyes, when I saw her face leaning over me, her voice broke with emotion. I knew her. John's stomach dropped. She saved your life, he whispered. Just like she saved his. Mama T nodded weakly. Yes, Johnny. Twice she saved my family. John leaned back, the hospital chair creaking under his weight. He ran his hands through his hair, grappling with the weight of the revelation. He had yelled at Serena, accused her, demanded she step away, while she was saving the same woman whose life she had comforted years ago. The shame hit him like a blow. How could I not have known? He murmured. Mama T smiled gently, even through her exhaustion. You didn't know, because your heart has been too busy. John winced. The truth was sharp. Mama T's fingers tightened slightly around his. It was barely a squeeze, but it held a world of meaning. Johnny, she is special. Good. Pure. I felt it then, and I felt it today. John nodded, swallowing hard. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about her. Terribly wrong. Mama T's eyes glimmered with understanding. You were scared, she whispered. Fear makes fools of all of us. John let out a breath. I don't want to be that man anymore. Then don't be, she murmured. Start by bringing her here. John froze. Now, he asked. Mama T smiled softly. While my heart still beats. Something inside John cracked open, some mix of urgency, purpose, and regret. He stood abruptly, squeezing Mama T's hand one last time. I'll find her, he promised. I'll bring her to you. As he reached the door, her frail voice called after him. And Johnny, be gentle. She deserves kindness. John paused. He nodded once, slow, solemn. I will. John stepped out of the hospital room and exhaled shakily. The hallway felt colder now. His steps felt heavier. But his purpose was clear. He pulled out his phone and started dialing every mall security contact he had. He needed to find Serena Scott, the woman who saved his grandmother, the woman who stayed with his dying grandfather, the woman he had mistaken for a threat. He clenched his jaw. He had to make this right. The elevator doors slid shut, and for the first time in years, John Williams wasn't thinking about meetings, numbers, or deadlines. He was thinking about the woman who had saved the two people he loved most in the world. He was thinking about Serena. The hospital machines beeped steadily across town, but Serena Scott heard none of it. She sat on a hard bench outside the mall's side entrance, the cool night air settling on her skin like a shiver she couldn't shake off. Her hands trembled in her lap, hands that had pressed into Mama T's chest, hands that had forced a failing heart to fight again. Those same hands were now tightly locked together, as if trying to hold the rest of her body together. Michelle sat beside her, clutching her mother's arm. Mama, she whispered. Are you okay? Serena nodded, but the nod was thin, fragile, a lie. Before she could answer, the mall security doors slid open with a harsh beep. 3 security officers stepped out, led by a tall, square-shouldered man with a clipboard. There she is, he said sharply. Ma'am, we need to speak with you again. Michelle rose instantly. Why? She didn't do anything wrong. Michelle, Serena murmured, pulling her daughter gently back down. It's all right. But it wasn't. She could feel the old fear creeping into her chest again, tightening like a familiar bruise. She stood slowly, bracing herself. The officer approached. We need a full written statement. There are conflicting witness reports. Some people said you were touching the woman aggressively. Others thought you were attacking her. Serena closed her eyes. There it was. The twist of help becoming suspicion. The shadow that always followed her. But she saved her. Michelle protested, stepping between them. You all saw her. The paramedics said. Yes, the medics verified it. The officer cut in. But several bystanders are filing complaints about the commotion. And the mall is liable. We need to document everything. Serena's breath wavered. Liable. Complaints. Statements. Words she had heard before. Words that had chased her out of her old hospital job. Words that had branded her as a problem, not a helper. Her eyes dropped. What exactly do you need from me? She asked softly. Start by explaining why you intervened. Another officer said, pen ready. Who told you to? Did you touch her before she collapsed? Were you pushing her? Did she hit her head when she fell? Michelle gasped. That's not what happened. Serena gently squeezed her hand. Let me answer, baby. She lifted her chin slightly, though her voice trembled. No one told me to intervene, Serena said. I saw her struggling to breathe. I recognized the signs of cardiac distress. She collapsed, and I started CPR. That's all. The officer scribbled. Recognize the signs? He repeated. How? Are you medically licensed? And just like that, her stomach dropped. No, Serena whispered. Not anymore. That answer hung in the air. Not anymore? The officer pressed. Care to clarify? A sharp breath escaped her. Painful. Haunted. Michelle stepped closer. Mama, you don't have to. But Serena knew she did. Trouble never disappeared when ignored. I used to work in a hospital, she said quietly. A caregiving unit. Years ago. But I left. I'm a maid now. The security officers exchanged looks. And why did you leave? One asked. Serena's heart pounded. Harder. Louder. Her throat tightened the way it had the day everything went wrong. I don't want to talk about that, she whispered. The officers kept questioning her. Checking boxes. Evaluating her like she was something suspicious left behind in a store aisle. While they questioned, Serena heard whispers behind her. Is she the maid who caused all that noise earlier? She was on top of that old lady. I heard she pushed her. No, she saved her. Are you sure? Those people lie all the time. She looked rough. I wouldn't trust her. Michelle's face twisted with anger. Mama, let's go. Please. But Serena stood still, every word hitting her like another cold slap. She had learned long ago that sometimes being right didn't protect you. Being kind didn't shield you. Being helpful didn't save you. And being black meant you needed to defend even your goodness. Finally, the head officer sighed. All right, he said, handing her a slip of paper. We might need to follow up. Please be available if we contact you. And try not to intervene like that again. It can create liability issues. Serena nodded slowly. Because what else could she say? The officers left. Serena sank onto the bench again, face buried in her hands. Michelle knelt in front of her, holding her wrists. Mama, you did everything right. You saved her. Serena shook her head. I don't know anymore, Michelle, she whispered. Every time I try to help, things go wrong. Michelle's eyes filled with fierce, protective tears. No, they go right. The wrong part is how people treat you. But Serena didn't feel right. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like she had crossed an invisible line she would never be forgiven for. A man's panicked voice. A woman collapsing in a clinic hallway. Serena rushing toward her. Performing CPR as the nurses scrambled. Saving her, bringing her back. Then the aftermath. The husband shouting. You pushed her. You made it worse. Her supervisor whispering. Serena, you shouldn't have touched her without permission. HR sliding a paper across the table, words blurry through her tears. Due to procedural concerns, we have to let you go. She had saved a life and lost her job for it. She had promised herself she would never step into that spotlight again. Never be the center of a scene. Never attract attention. Never risk everything just because her heart couldn't stay quiet. Yet today, she had done it again. Instinctively. Without thinking. And she was terrified of what came next. Michelle wrapped her arms around her mother's shoulders, pulling her close. Mama, look at me, she urged. Serena lifted her head slowly. You're brave, Michelle whispered. Even when you're scared. Even when people don't see you. You helped her. You saved someone's grandmother. You saved someone's world. Tears slipped down Serena's cheeks. I don't want trouble, she whispered. Not again. I can't lose my job, Michelle. We can't afford that. Michelle wiped her mother's tears tenderly. We'll be okay, she said. I believe in you. Those words broke something inside Serena. The loneliness she always carried. She hugged Michelle, holding her as if the night itself might steal her child away. "Let's go home," she whispered. And together, they walked into the dark. Their building wasn't large or polished. Just a narrow block of units with flickering hallway lights and walls that echoed footsteps. Serena unlocked their door quietly. Inside, the small two-room apartment felt warm, familiar, safe. Michelle dropped their bags by the couch. "Mama, sit," she said, guiding Serena to the chair. But Serena didn't sit. She paced. She twisted her hands. She stared at her phone, terrified it would ring with news of trouble, of interrogation, of accusations she couldn't fight. All she wanted was to slip back into invisibility. "Maybe I shouldn't have touched her," Serena muttered, pacing faster. "Maybe it wasn't my place. Maybe." "Mama." Michelle stepped in front of her, voice steady. "It was your place. You saw someone dying. And you helped. Don't let people make you question that." Serena stopped, looked at her daughter, saw the certainty in her eyes. And for a moment, just a moment, she believed it. John Williams's car sliced through the city streets, headlights carving a path through the night. He gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles stood out pale. He had already spoken to mall security, reviewed video footage, talked to witnesses, tracked the paramedics, got her name, got her address. Every mile he drove made his guilt grow heavier. The woman he had yelled at, had doubted, had nearly pulled away from his grandmother, was the same woman who held his grandfather as he died. He couldn't breathe around the weight of that. He couldn't erase the image of Serena's steady hands, her calm voice, her courage. He couldn't erase Mama T's words, "She saved your family twice." He turned onto Bellwood Lane. The apartment building rose in the distance, small, dimly lit, nothing like the world he lived in. His chest tightened. She lived here? She struggled like this? He parked, stepped out, and stared up at the building. No turning back now. John took a slow breath and walked toward the entrance. Serena had finally sat down, exhaustion pulling her toward sleep, when a knock rattled the apartment door. Michelle stiffened. "Mama, who's that?" Serena's heart stopped. Another knock. Louder. Urgent. Serena rose slowly. Her fears gathered behind her eyes. What if it was the mall? The police? Someone coming to blame her again? Her hands trembled as she reached for the doorknob. She opened it, and standing under the dim hallway light, as if carrying the weight of the entire night on his shoulders, was John Williams. Breathless, eyes red, suit rumpled, guilt carved into his face like a wound. Serena froze. Michelle stepped back in shock. And John, for the first time in a very long time, looked uncertain. "Serena Scott," he said softly. Serena swallowed. "Yes." John's voice faltered. I need to talk to you." And behind his eyes was a truth Serena never expected to face. Serena stood frozen in the doorway, her hand gripping the knob, as if the entire world were trying to push its way in behind John Williams. Michelle hovered beside her, her protective instinct rising like a shield, shoulders squared, lips pressed tight. John looked nothing like the polished millionaire the city knew, no cold confidence, no calculated charm, no armor of power. He looked human, lost even. "Serena Scott," he repeated, his voice softer now, unsure. Serena swallowed hard. "Yes." Michelle stepped slightly in front of her mother, chin raised. "What do you want?" Her tone startled even Serena. John blinked, realizing how intimidating he must seem at their doorway. Tall, well-fed, standing in a suit that probably cost more than their monthly rent. Shame flickered across his face. I'm sorry," he said quickly, raising both hands in surrender. "I didn't mean to startle you. I'm not here for anything bad. I need to talk to your mother." Michelle didn't move, didn't blink, didn't trust him. Serena gently touched her daughter's shoulder. "It's all right, Michelle." But Michelle didn't budge. "He yelled at you today? He tried to pull you away. He thought you were hurting Mama T." John closed his eyes, the reminder landing like a punch. "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry. Deeply. I handled everything wrong." He looked at Serena then, eyes soft with guilt. "I came here tonight because I owe you more than words." Serena hesitated. The hallway light above them flickered, buzzing faintly, casting a weak glow across John's exhausted face. Her body felt heavy, drained from the day's chaos, yet her heart raced with old fear. Old memories. Old wounds. "Mr. Williams," she began carefully, "if you're here for a statement or Or to clarify something for the mall? I already spoke to them. No, John said quickly. This has nothing to do with the mall or any legal matter. He drew a shaky breath. This is personal. The words hung in the air. Slowly, Serena stepped aside just enough for him to enter. Michelle stood guard like a silent warning, but moved back when Serena nodded. John stepped into the apartment and paused, absorbing the tiny living room, the second-hand couch, the small dining table, the pictures of Michelle taped on the wall. His chest tightened. This was how they lived? This was the woman who saved his grandmother? Please sit, Serena said quietly. But John shook his head. No, I'd rather stand. I don't want to impose. Serena folded her hands in front of her, the same way she did whenever she braced for bad news. What do you want to talk about? John met her eyes. Mama T. Serena stiffened. John continued, voice raw. She's awake. Serena's hand flew to her mouth. Relief and fear collided in her eyes. Thank God. She keeps asking for you, he added. Serena froze. Completely. John stepped forward a little, but not too close. He didn't want to overwhelm her. She said your name, he explained. She described you perfectly. She said, find Serena. Bring her to me. Michelle's eyes widened. But Serena looked like someone had hit her chest hard enough to knock the air out. She wants to see me, she whispered. Yes, John replied. She won't stop talking about you. She's emotional, but clear. She says you were there for my grandfather when he took his last breath. Serena's eyes filled instantly. She looked away, covering her mouth with her hand. Michelle stepped closer. Mama, is that true? Did you know Mama T before today? Serena nodded slowly. I didn't know her name, she whispered, voice shaking. But I remember her husband. He was a kind man. Scared, but kind. Her voice trembled. I held his hand when the monitors flatlined. The nurses were overwhelmed that night. I didn't want him to die alone. John swallowed. Hard. My grandmother remembers that moment vividly, he said. She told me you called her over to say goodbye, and that you comforted her when she broke down. She said she never forgot you. She said, his voice cracked. She said she's prayed every day to find the angel nurse with the gentle voice. Serena's face crumpled. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently, falling one after another, as if breaking through a dam she'd held for years. I didn't think she'd remember me, she whispered. So many people forget who I am as soon as I walk away. John stared at her, not with pity, but with something else entirely. Something deeper. Something that squeezed painfully inside his chest. Respect, gratitude, and guilt. He took a slow breath. I came here tonight to say I'm sorry, he said, voice low, sincere. For how I reacted at the mall. For assuming the worst. For grabbing your arm. For not seeing you. Serena flinched at the memory. The shouting. The hands pulling her away. The suspicion. The fear. You seemed like a stranger touching my grandmother. John continued, his voice breaking. And I panicked. But I was wrong. Deeply wrong. Serena lowered her gaze. Michelle crossed her arms, still guarding her mother. People are always wrong about her. John nodded painfully. Yes, they are. He stepped back, giving them space. Mama T wants to see you, he repeated. She's asking for you by name. And she said something else. Serena lifted her head, eyes red but curious. She said, tell her thank you for saving my family twice. Serena covered her face, tears spilling through her fingers. Michelle hugged her tightly. John watched, throat tight, as the woman who saved his grandmother crumbled beneath the weight of her past and the sudden light of recognition. Finally, Serena inhaled shakily. But her voice cracked. I can't go back to that hospital. I can't. I promised myself I'd never set foot in one as anything but a visitor. Last time I helped someone, I was punished for it. John listened, every word like a blade. What happened? He asked gently. Serena wiped her cheeks, but her hands trembled violently. I saved a woman, she whispered. A patient in the hallway. She collapsed. I performed CPR. And when she lived, her family blamed me for touching her. They said I made it worse. The hospital didn't defend me. They said I went outside my assigned duties. I was fired. Blacklisted. John's heart split open. He understood, suddenly, why she worked as a maid. Why she panicked when people pointed fingers. Why she trembled when questioned. Why she avoided praise like it was poison. Serena lifted her gaze, eyes hollow with old pain. Every time I try to help, she said softly, Someone punishes me. The room went silent. John's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in sorrow. Shame. Self-disgust. He had been part of that pain today. He had been what she feared most. He stepped forward just enough that the warm light from the lamp touched his face. "Serena," he said softly, "I can't change what people did to you in the past. And I can't erase how I acted today." He swallowed. "But I can tell you this. This time, someone wants to thank you." Serena stared at him. John continued, his voice trembling with sincerity. "My grandmother is alive because of you. And she needs to see you. Not as a maid. Not as a suspect. Not as a stranger." He took another fragile breath. "As the woman who saved her." Serena's lips trembled. Michelle glanced at her mother, then at John, then back again. "Mama," she whispered. "You should go." Serena wiped her tears one last time. "I'm scared," she admitted. Michelle squeezed her hand. "I'll go with you." John nodded. "Both of you are welcome." Serena closed her eyes, breathed in, breathed out, and finally whispered, "Okay." John exhaled, with relief, with gratitude, with something he hadn't felt in years. Serena picked up her coat. Michelle grabbed her backpack. Together, the three walked toward the door, toward the hospital, toward Mama T, toward the moment that would change everything. The hospital at night always felt like a lonely city, bright lights, silent corridors, echoes of hurried footsteps, the smell of antiseptic masking the weight of people's fears. Serena had walked these halls once as a caregiver, moving with purpose, pride, and soft strength. Tonight, she walked them like a ghost. Michelle held her hand tightly. John walked beside them, but slightly behind, as if giving them space, as if he knew this path belonged more to Serena than to him. When they reached the cardiac care wing, Serena froze. The memories were immediate. Her mother, tubes in her arms. The silence after the monitor flatlined. The cold apology from the doctor. The hollow ache that lived in her chest every day since. Serena gripped Michelle's hand harder. John noticed. "We can rest for a moment," he said softly. Serena shook her head. "No. If I stop, I won't move again." They kept walking. Room 214. John paused at the door. "She's awake," he whispered. "She's been asking for you." Serena inhaled slowly. Fear and tenderness tangled deep inside her ribs. Michelle squeezed her fingers. "I'm right here, Mama." Serena nodded. With a trembling hand, she pushed the door open. Mama T lay in the hospital bed, propped slightly upright. Her silver hair spread across the pillow like soft threads of moonlight. Her skin was pale but warm, her breathing slow but steady. A heart monitor pulsed steadily beside her, each beep a quiet reminder of the miracle that had unfolded hours ago. When the door creaked gently, Mama T's tired eyes lifted, then widened. "Oh," she whispered, voice thin but alive. "It's you." Serena stepped in slowly, as if afraid the moment would shatter if she moved too quickly. John stayed at the threshold, frozen by a tenderness he didn't know how to interrupt. Mama T lifted a weak hand, reaching shakily. "Child, come here." Serena felt her throat close. Her feet moved without her permission. Michelle stood behind her, watching something sacred unfold. When Serena reached the bedside, Mama T grasped her hand with surprising strength, her wrinkled fingers curling over Serena's like she'd been waiting years to hold them again. A tear slipped down the elderly woman's face. "You," Mama T breathed. "You saved my husband. And today you saved me." Serena's breath caught. The words hit her chest like a soft hammer, breaking her open in a way she didn't expect. "Mama T," she whispered, eyes filling. "I didn't know you remembered me. How could I forget?" Mama T smiled weakly, but her eyes sparkled with a warmth that reached deep. "There are angels who walk into your life once, and you spend the rest of your years praying they return." Serena covered her mouth as her tears fell freely. Mama T continued, squeezing her hand. "The night my Thomas died, I watched you sit beside him. You held his hand when he was scared. You spoke to him softly, told him he wasn't alone." Her voice trembled with memory. "You comforted him when I could not stop crying." John's breathing hitched. He had never heard this story, not from his grandmother, not from anyone. "And when I came into the room," Mama T whispered, "you were rubbing his hand like it was something precious. No nurse, no doctor, had ever shown us kindness like that." Serena's tears dripped onto the blanket. She didn't wipe them. She couldn't. "I remember," she whispered. "Your husband was struggling, and I didn't want him to feel forgotten." Mama T's lower lip quivered. "You made his last breath gentle." Silence filled the room, warm, heavy, holy. Michelle wiped her own eyes quietly, watching her mother be seen, finally, for who she truly was. Mama T smiled at her. "And you must be Michelle." She extended her hand gently. "Your mother spoke about you that night. She said you were her reason for everything. Michelle gasped softly and came closer, placing her tiny hand inside Mama T's frail one. Serena broke again, softer this time. No fear in her tears, only release. Mama T turned her gaze back to Serena. I looked for you, she said. For years. I asked nurses. I described your face. I prayed God would let me meet you again before I left this world. Serena sobbed silently. I didn't expect it to happen like this, Mama T continued, chuckling weakly, collapsing in a mall like some dramatic old lady. Serena smiled through her tears. I'm glad I saw you. It was God's timing. No, Mama T whispered, shaking her head gently. It was your heart, just like before. John swallowed thickly. He had never seen his grandmother cry like this. Never seen her look at anyone the way she looked at Serena. It felt like watching two pieces of a broken past fit themselves back together. Mama T slowly lifted Serena's hand and pressed it to her cheek. You saved my family, she said. Twice. Serena broke. Fully. Her shoulders shook as she cried silently, leaning forward until her forehead touched Mama T's hand. Michelle wrapped an arm around her. Mama T stroked Serena's hair gently, as if soothing a daughter. When Serena finally pulled back, Mama T looked at her with serious eyes. I want to thank you properly, she said. Not with words. Words fade. I want to do something lasting. Serena shook her head immediately. No, please. I didn't help you for anything in return. I know, Mama T smiled. That's why I must. Serena bit her lip, overwhelmed. Then Mama T turned her gaze to John. He straightened, as if pulled from a trance. For the first time since entering the room, Serena looked at him. And John saw her differently now. Not as the woman kneeling on a mall floor, not as the stranger he had yelled at, not as the maid with trembling hands. He saw her as the thread quietly stitching his family back together. And in that look, Serena realized something had shifted in him. Mama T spoke softly. John, this woman came into our lives twice when it mattered most. And we repaid her with fear, suspicion, and ignorance. John's jaw tightened. Serena looked away, embarrassed. Today, Mama T continued. I opened my eyes because of her. You still have your grandmother because of her. John swallowed, voice tight. I know. He took a few steps inside the room, stopping beside Serena. His eyes glistened faintly, but he didn't hide it. Serena, he said slowly, as if tasting the truth for the first time. I saw you today, really saw you. Not your uniform. Not your job. You. Serena looked up at him, startled. You saved more than her life, John added. You gave me back the only family I have left. His voice strained on the last word. Mama T nodded, tears shining. Michelle watched them carefully, sensing something changing. Serena shook her head gently. I only did what I was trained to do. No. John whispered, his voice filled with quiet awe. You did what only a person with a rare heart could do. Serena blinked rapidly as fresh tears welled. Mama T squeezed her hand again. You are not invisible, Serena Scott. Not anymore. Those words pierced Serena deeper than anything else. For the first time in years, someone said she mattered. Someone saw her worth. Someone remembered her heart. Michelle hugged her mother's arm tightly, whispering, See, Mama? You were never meant to stay small. Serena's lips trembled. John took a slow breath, his voice steady but gentle. Serena, whatever you need, whatever support, protection, opportunity, this family owes you more than gratitude. We owe you our lives. He paused. And I owe you an apology no words can cover. Serena stared at him, searching his face, looking past the wealth, past the tailored suit, past the status. What she found was sincerity, vulnerability, remorse, and something quietly forming behind his eyes, something neither of them could name yet. Finally, Serena nodded. I forgive you. The words fell like warm water, soft, cleansing, unexpected. John's shoulders dropped with relief, as if he'd been holding his breath for hours. Mama T smiled, wiping her eyes. This is what family should look like. Truth, grace, healing. Serena lowered her gaze, overwhelmed. John stepped back slightly, giving her space, but never taking his eyes off her. Because now he knew. She wasn't a maid. She wasn't a stranger. She wasn't an accident that happened to save his grandmother. She was a thread woven into his family's story long before he realized it. And fate had brought her back. Again, if you're already hooked in this story and enjoying it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let's get back to our story. By sunrise, the hospital grounds looked nothing like they had the night before. Yesterday, it had been a quiet island of grief and fear. Today it pulsed with flashing lights, murmuring voices, cameras clicking like a swarm of mechanical insects. News vans lined the curb. Reporters hovered by the entrance like predators scenting blood or a headline. Security stood stiffly, trying to hold back the growing crowd of onlookers whispering. That's the millionaire's grandma. Wasn't she the woman who collapsed in the mall? I heard a maid saved her life. No. Security said the maid caused it. Well, someone's lying. Serena heard all of it from the 10th floor window. She stood apart from the noise, her hospital visitor band still wrapped around her wrist, Michelle beside her quietly holding her hand. It didn't feel real. None of it felt real. Just hours ago she was kneeling on a mall floor, pressing life back into a dying woman. Now the world was trying to rewrite her part in the story. Michelle watched her mother with worried eyes. You okay, Mama? Serena inhaled slowly, staring down at the chaotic crowd. I'm trying to be. Michelle leaned her head against her shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong. Serena swallowed hard. Sometimes doing right doesn't protect you. Just then, the hospital room door opened. John stepped in, still in yesterday's clothes, hair slightly disheveled, his expression carved with exhaustion and determination. Serena, he said softly, it's time. Serena turned. Time for what? John hesitated, then stepped closer. They're asking questions. Reporters. Officials. They want to know what really happened at the mall yesterday. Serena's heart sank. John, I never wanted publicity. I just wanted Mama T to live. And she's alive because of you, John said firmly. That's exactly why you need to speak. She looked away, anxiety swirling. People like me don't get listened to. They get questioned, judged. John swallowed, visibly pained. I know. That's why I'm going with you. Serena blinked, startled. He held her gaze. No one is going to twist what you did. Not while I'm standing next to you. Not while my grandmother is standing next to you. Serena exhaled shakily. Michelle whispered, Mama, you should go. Let them hear the truth. Before Serena could answer, a soft voice echoed from behind John. Child, come here. Mama T. She was sitting in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse, wrapped in a hospital blanket, eyes still tired but full of fire. She extended her hand toward Serena. Stand beside me, she said. If the world wants to ask questions, then it will get answers from us. Together. Serena felt her eyes fill with emotion. Something inside her that had been bent by years of humiliation, false accusations, and silent suffering began, very slowly, to stand upright. She nodded. Mama T smiled proudly. That's my girl. The hospital lobby was a storm of voices. Flashbulbs exploded. Microphones waved. Cameras wheeled forward. Security had carved a small path to a podium that the hospital staff had set up hastily, its metal legs shaking every time someone walked past. When John, Serena, Michelle, and Mama T approached, the crowd surged. There she is. That's the maid. Is it true she attacked the elderly woman? Is she being charged? I heard she saved her actually. Some security guard said she refused to step aside. Where's the millionaire? John stepped forward first. He placed one hand on the podium, his jaw tight, his face set with a solemn, almost protective fire that the press had never seen from him. Good morning, he began. Microphones leaned in as if hungry. Yesterday, my grandmother collapsed at the Willow Creek Mall. She went into cardiac distress and stopped breathing. A murmur swept through the crowd. John continued, his voice steady. While bystanders panicked, while security hesitated, while every second counted, he turned slightly, looking at Serena. One woman acted. Cameras snapped rapidly. That woman is Serena Scott, and she is the reason my grandmother is alive today. The reporters erupted. Is she a trained nurse? Why did security detain her? Is this part of a lawsuit? Is this a publicity? John raised a hand sharply. Silence fell. She is a maid, he said clearly. Gasps. Whispering. Some eyebrows raised with quiet prejudice. John's voice hardened. But before she was a maid, she was a caregiver. A hospital worker. Someone who has comforted the dying, saved lives, and witnessed more suffering than any of us can imagine. Reporters leaned in closer. And yesterday, John continued, she saw symptoms that everyone else missed, including trained professionals. He locked eyes with the lead mall security officer who stood awkwardly near the entrance. While security tried to restrain her, John said, voice cold, Serena was performing life-saving CPR. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd, sharper now. One reporter raised a hand. Are you saying mall security interfered with a medical emergency? John nodded. Yes, and I have formal statements from witnesses who confirm it. The officer stiffened, glancing around nervously. John stepped aside slightly, allowing someone else to take center stage. The crowd shifted as Mama T's wheelchair rolled forward. Mama T lifted her chin, frail but fierce, her voice thin but unwavering. I am alive today because this woman did not wait for permission to save me. Every camera in the room pointed at them now. Mama T pointed a trembling finger toward Serena. She saw me falling before my knees even hit the floor. She knew something was wrong the moment I clutched my chest. She opened my airway, kept my heart beating, and refused to let me go. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. That, my friends, is not the work of a maid. Her eyes glowed with gratitude. That is the work of an angel. Serena felt the words hit her like warm wind. Her throat closed. Her hands trembled. Michelle squeezed her arm with a small, proud smile. A reporter raised a hand hesitantly. Ma'am, did you know her before this? Mama T nodded slowly. Yes. Years ago, when my husband was dying, she comforted him. She held his hand through the worst night of my life. A beat. I prayed to see her again. And God answered, in the middle of a mall floor. The crowd gasped. Some reporters actually lowered their microphones, stunned into silence. Mama T waved Serena closer. Stand beside me, child, she whispered. Serena stepped forward, standing next to Mama T, her posture straightening with a dignity she had forgotten she had a right to. Cameras flashed again, but this time, the narrative had changed. She wasn't a suspect. She wasn't a maid. She wasn't an intruder in someone else's world. She was a lifesaver, a professional, a woman of worth, a human being finally seen. A reporter turned to Serena directly. Miss Scott, what made you intervene so quickly? What gave you the confidence to take control when no one else did? Serena hesitated, but Mama T squeezed her hand. She took a soft breath and leaned into the microphone. I lost my mother to heart failure, Serena said quietly. I've worked in hospitals. I've seen what cardiac distress looks like. And I've learned that hesitation is often the difference between life and death. A hush fell over the room. She continued, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't act because I thought I was better than the doctors. I acted because I couldn't watch another person slip away while people stood frozen. She looked out at the crowd, really looked. I acted because it was the right thing to do. A wave of emotion swept through the audience. Some reporters lowered their cameras. A few wiped their eyes. The mall security officer bowed his head, ashamed. Mama T placed a hand over her heart. This woman is not just anything, she declared. Not a maid. Not a stranger. Not someone to dismiss or silence. Her eyes shone. She is family to me. And from this day forward, she will be treated as such. The crowd erupted. Cheers. Gasps. Cameras firing like fireworks. John stepped forward once more, his voice strong, resolute. Let it be known, he said. Serena Scott risked everything to save the most important person in my life. If not for her, my grandmother would be gone. He paused, looking at Serena with deep sincerity. She is a hero. A roar of applause filled the lobby, raw, emotional, overwhelming. Serena froze. Hero. The word felt too big, too heavy, too bright. But as Mama T squeezed her hand, as Michelle hugged her waist, as John looked at her with gratitude instead of suspicion, Serena realized something profound. For the first time in her life, people weren't looking at what uniform she wore. They were looking at her heart, her courage, her humanity. And for the first time, she wasn't invisible. The hospital quieted again after the storm of cameras and questions faded. The reporters slowly drifted away. The lights dimmed. The chaos softened into a warm, calm hush, the kind that fills a place after truth has blown through it like a cleansing wind. Serena stood beside Mama T's wheelchair in the hallway long after the crowd had cleared. The applause still echoed faintly inside her chest. The word hero still felt foreign on her skin, like a coat she wasn't sure she had the right to wear. Michelle clung to her arm gently, still smiling with the pride only a daughter can feel. John stood a few feet away, speaking quietly to a nurse, his voice low but warm, nothing like the cold authority he carried at the mall. When he finished, he turned back toward them. She should rest now, he said, nodding toward his grandmother. Mama T scoffed lightly. Rest later. Talk now. John chuckled, a sound Serena had never heard from him until today. It made him look younger, softer, human. He pushed the wheelchair gently toward a quiet corner of the hallway. Michelle joined Serena on one side, and John walked on the other. They formed a strange, imperfect circle, like a family learning its shape for the first time. Mama T looked up at Serena, eyes shining with a kind of wisdom that comes from surviving both love and heartbreak. Serena, child, I have something I need to ask you. She took Serena's hand with both of hers. Warm, fragile, steady. You saved my husband when the doctors forgot he was a person. You saved me when my own knees betrayed me. She paused, voice softening. Now I want to ask for one more miracle. Serena blinked, startled. Mama T, I'll do anything I can. Mama T smiled. I want you to run my foundation. Silence. Serena's breath caught. Michelle gasped quietly. John's eyebrows lifted with genuine surprise, but his eyes, those steady blue-gray eyes, held nothing but wholehearted approval. I run your foundation? Serena whispered, stunned. But I'm just. Mama T squeezed her hand sharply. Don't finish that sentence, she warned. I won't allow it. Serena's eyes filled instantly. You are not just anything. You have the heart of a healer, the instincts of a caregiver, and the courage of 10 men with badges and training. She sat up straighter. My foundation is meant to help elderly people live with dignity, to protect them from neglect and loneliness. Her voice trembled. I need someone who understands what dignity means. Serena's whole body shook with emotion. Images flashed through her mind. The hospital where she used to work, her mother's labored breathing, the whispered hour of death she carried alone, the mall floor under her knees yesterday morning. Mama T, she whispered, voice cracking. I'm not qualified to run anything like that. I've never been in charge of. You've been in charge of survival, Mama T interrupted softly. That's more than some executives ever learn. Michelle placed a hand on Serena's back. Mama, you deserve this. Serena looked at her daughter, her bright, brave girl, and saw all the years they had scraped by, all the dreams delayed, all the doors that closed before she could even knock. And suddenly it felt like the impossible might be possible. Why me? Serena whispered. Why choose me? Mama T smiled the way only a grandmother can, a mix of tenderness, confidence, and absolute certainty. Because, child, I trust you with my life, she said, lifting their joined hands. And now I want to trust you with my legacy. Serena's tears finally broke free. She covered her mouth with one hand, overwhelmed. John stepped a little closer, his voice low, gentle. You don't have to answer right away, he said. Take your time. But Serena shook her head slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. No, she whispered. I don't need time. She looked at Mama T, truly looked, letting herself see the love, the trust, the years of longing to thank her. Yes, Serena said. Her voice trembled. I accept. Mama T exhaled a soft breath of relief, almost a prayer. Good, she murmured. Then we begin when I get out of this chair. Michelle hugged her mother in a fierce, trembling embrace. Mama, I'm so proud of you, she whispered. John stepped closer and, carefully, almost shyly, extended his hand to Serena. She blinked, surprised, but placed her hand in his. He squeezed gently. You deserve every bit of this, he said. My grandmother couldn't have chosen anyone better. Serena felt her cheeks warm. John released her hand slowly, almost reluctantly. And then, Mama T tapped the armrest of her wheelchair with a faint smirk. John, dear, stop staring at her like you've never seen a woman before. John nearly choked on air. Michelle giggled. Serena covered her face, embarrassed and flustered. Mama T simply smiled knowingly. Later that afternoon, Serena and Michelle returned to the small apartment where every wall had heard their worries, their prayers, their late-night tears. The front door creaked the same way it always had. The living room was as tiny as ever. The single narrow hallway still smelled faintly of laundry detergent and lemon soap. But everything felt different. Michelle twirled her backpack onto the couch and turned to Serena with sparkling eyes. Mama, we're okay now, she whispered. The words were so simple, so soft, so full of the hope Serena had fought for all her life. Serena sank onto the couch and let the weight of the day settle in her bones. Yeah, she whispered back. We're okay. For the first time in years, Serena felt like she wasn't balancing on the edge of survival. Like the world wasn't waiting for her to fail. Like she didn't have to shrink herself small just to exist safely. She was allowed to breathe, allowed to rise, allowed to dream again. Michelle curled up beside her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Do you think we'll still, have to struggle? The girl asked quietly. Serena brushed a hand through Michelle's hair. No, baby, I don't think we will. They sat like that for a long time. Quiet, safe, held by the smallness of a home that had seen too much fear but would now see something new. Peace. The next morning brought soft light through the blinds and the scent of possibility. Serena and Michelle dressed in their best clothes, simple, clean, hopeful, and headed back to the hospital to visit Mama T. When they arrived, John was already there, leaning against the window, hands in his pockets, eyes thoughtful. When he saw them, he straightened and gave a warm smile, something that seemed to come easier to him now. Good morning, he said softly. Michelle greeted him cheerfully, and he greeted her back with a warmth Serena hadn't seen before. Something paternal, gentle, protective. It softened something inside Serena she didn't know was stiff. Mama T brightened when she saw them. There's my family, she declared. Serena felt her chest tighten. Michelle's eyes widened. John smiled, looking almost shy. Serena stepped closer. Mama T, you don't have to call us. I will call you what you are, Mama T insisted. Family isn't blood. She placed her hand over Serena's. Family is who shows up when the world falls apart. Serena couldn't speak. Her throat locked. Her heart flooded. Mama T squeezed her hand again and looked at John. Say it, boy. John cleared his throat. He walked toward Serena, slowly, deliberately, until he stood right in front of her. Serena, he said softly, you didn't just save her. He glanced at his grandmother, then back to Serena, eyes deep and sincere. You saved me too. The words hit Serena like sunlight through a storm cloud. She didn't know how to respond. There were no words big enough. Instead, she breathed, deep, steady, alive, and felt the door inside her open. She nodded, voice shaking. Then, we saved each other. Mama T clapped her hands lightly. That's right. Now let's build something together. She looked at Michelle. Young lady, you'll help too. You have your mother's fire. We'll need it. Michelle beamed. Serena smiled through tears. Her hand found Michelle's. John's found his grandmother's. And in that quiet hospital room, where yesterday grief had hovered, where fear had choked the air, where Serena once stood trembling and invisible, a new family took shape. Not by blood, not by duty, but by gratitude, respect, and the kind of love born only out of saving and being saved. A new beginning. A future with foundation, purpose, and dignity. A life where Serena and Michelle would never be overlooked again. And as the sunlight flooded in through the window, warming all four of them, Serena knew they were finally home. So soft, so full of the hope Serena had fought for all her life. Serena sank onto the couch and let the weight of the day settle in her bones. Yeah, she whispered back. We're okay. For the first time in years, Serena felt like she wasn't balancing on the edge of survival. Like the world wasn't waiting for her to fail. Like she didn't have to shrink herself small just to exist safely. She was allowed to breathe, allowed to rise, allowed to dream again. Michelle curled up beside her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. Do you think we'll still, have to struggle? The girl asked quietly. Serena brushed a hand through Michelle's hair. No, baby, I don't think we will. They sat like that for a long time. Quiet, safe, held by the smallness of a home that had seen too much fear but would now see something new. Peace. The next morning brought soft light through the blinds and the scent of possibility. Serena and Michelle dressed in their best clothes, simple, clean, hopeful, and headed back to the hospital to visit Mama T. When they arrived, John was already there, leaning against the window, hands in his pockets, eyes thoughtful. When he saw them, he straightened and gave a warm smile, something that seemed to come easier to him now. Good morning, he said softly. Michelle greeted him cheerfully, and he greeted her back with a warmth Serena hadn't seen before. Something paternal, gentle, protective. It softened something inside Serena she didn't know was stiff. Mama T brightened when she saw them. There's my family, she declared. Serena felt her chest tighten. Michelle's eyes widened. John smiled, looking almost shy. Serena stepped closer. Mama T, you don't have to call us. I will call you what you are, Mama T insisted. Family isn't blood. She placed her hand over Serena's. Family is who shows up when the world falls apart. Serena couldn't speak. Her throat locked. Her heart flooded. Mama T squeezed her hand again and looked at John. Say it, boy. John cleared his throat. He walked toward Serena, slowly, deliberately, until he stood right in front of her. Serena, he said softly, you didn't just save her. He glanced at his grandmother, then back to Serena, eyes deep and sincere. You saved me too. The words hit Serena like sunlight through a storm cloud. She didn't know how to respond. There were no words big enough. Instead, she breathed, deep, steady, alive, and felt the door inside her open. She nodded, voice shaking. Then, we saved each other. Mama T clapped her hands lightly. That's right. Now let's build something together. She looked at Michelle. Young lady, you'll help too. You have your mother's fire. We'll need it. Michelle beamed. Serena smiled through tears. Her hand found Michelle's. John's found his grandmother's. And in that quiet hospital room, where yesterday grief had hovered, where fear had choked the air, where Serena once stood trembling and invisible, a new family took shape. Not by blood, not by duty, but by gratitude, respect, and the kind of love born only out of saving and being saved. A new beginning. A future with foundation, purpose, and dignity. A life where Serena and Michelle would never be overlooked again. And as the sunlight flooded in through the window, warming all four of them, Serena knew they were finally home.